Hey guys, Nathan Chen here, and today we are in Blackmagic Design's office, and I'm speaking to Grant Petty. He's the co-founder of Blackmagic Design, and he's been kind enough to have us out of their offices. He's taken this company from zero to $300 million in annual revenue, purely bootstrapped, and his company has been responsible for 80% of industry films and all sorts of crazy TV and like Game of Thrones, 300 in the back, you name it. Like most of these TV shows and film is like movies are shot with his products and technology. So I was actually surprised. I didn't know you guys were in Melbourne. So first of all, thanks so much for taking the time, Grant.
No problem.
So the first question that I ask everyone that comes on is, how'd you get your job?
Well, when you found a company yourself, then you kind of build the job around you. And the job changes over time. I mean, you start off doing everything.
Yep.
But I think that's one of the things that makes founders do well is that if you manage to keep hold of it, because it can be tough to hold on, but you sort of know all the tasks required to get something going. And as you become more successful, you can add extra people,
Yeah, so tell me about Blackmagic Design. Incredible company, like tier one brand, like in the industry. Before you started, you were an engineer, and you were frustrated with the TV and film industry. Can you tell us, like, how did this all get conceived? How did it all start?
Yeah, I mean, I was a television industry engineer, so I think that's one of the good things. You think about a company's culture.
Yeah.
And here I was working in television companies, and you work in conjunction with other people, and so you're never really doing everything yourself. And so, in many ways, you're working in the back rooms to make sure that the guys in the edit suites look great.
Yes.
And so, what your role in that is part of a team. And I think really to make a company that's creative, you're working with a bunch of people, a complex group of people with different skill sets. It's the same model as what I had in television. So in many ways, it's been very comfortable making that transition because I think the power CEO that commands everybody, that's really a very old-fashioned, capital-intensive kind of way of running a company where you have power over people.
Yes.
But if you're running a creative company, then it's actually the other way around. It's upside down. What you've actually got is you're there to serve everyone.
Yes.
Not just the customers, but also all the people. Your job is to enable everyone else to do their thing.
Yes.
And get out of the way and let them do it. So it's sort of compatible. It's actually a compatible cultural shift. So it wasn't that difficult to do.
So you lead from the back, not from the front.
Kind of both. You're running all around the place, making sure everyone's got everything they need, but also you've got to look at the bigger picture. How's this all fit together? Really what I was doing was a protest against the way the TV industry was, where everything was extremely expensive, very badly. Essentially the problem we have in the TV industry is you've got it's electronic media, right? So you've got complicated technical products that people are using to do creative work. So the problem is the people who make those products often con the customers because they realize they don't know anything about them. So they can make the most outlandish thing, make the most outlandish statements they want to make out of it, and then sell them for a lot of money. And so I felt like all my friends were being ripped off. So I felt like, once you learned all the products and built television facilities and things like that, then you realize after that the role is to, how do I go further? How do I, take the next step? Well, the next step is actually to build the products myself because no one else is building them. And then the job is to fix the things that no one else is fixing and to take the industry where we want to take it. The TV industry was very wrong. It was very ego-driven, very capital-intensive. I wanted to make it was controlled by people with essentially who could get bank loans. It wasn't controlled by the people doing creative work. What I felt like is if the equipment was cheaper, we could make the equipment more affordable. If you could afford to buy that with your wage, you could buy the equipment, do the work, and just choose that as a medium to work in. Then you could change, you could do the creative work yourself. So essentially like what you're doing here with the cameras and things you have, this is what my dream was. And so you start off by thinking, okay, I've got to change an industry. The industry is wrong. Only people from within an industry that can really understand what's wrong with it. Then you go, okay, well, let's change that. And so that's what the company's role's been, just to fix a whole industry. And then we have to do everything. We have to fix everything to, the sales channels. I had to learn how all that stuff worked.
Yes.
The people often a lot of manufacturers in this industry are extremely hostile and very nasty and commission-based sales guys, all this stuff. So it was quite a difficult thing to do. I mean, but you want big goals, right? Otherwise, it's not interesting. It's just I'm not a market segment guy. I'm like, let's make the world different, and hope, obviously, hopefully better.
Yes.
That was my thing.
So tell me, Grant, like what was the first product? How did you start? And how did you fund? Because this stuff isn't cheap to produce, like the prototypes, everything. Talk to me. How the hell did you do this? Because
I
I'm
mean,
still baffled.
it was difficult. I think when you start out, I mean, it's refreshing. You start off 100% incompetent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't actually know anything. I'm coming from another industry. Now I've got to build something, and how do you do that?
Yeah.
So you look at it and you go, well, I don't know really what I'm doing, but I do know the thing I need to make. So you just get going and you just build it. And so the first product we had was a capture card. It plugged into a computer and it captured high quality video in and out. Now, I'm thinking about how to solve problems in the industry. And a friend of mine bought a scanner and had Photoshop with it. And I realized, hang on a second, this is a publishing industry tool, but it's more powerful than the paint systems that we use in television, and they're dedicated boxes. So I thought, well, hang on a second, there's a whole publishing industry there. So what's that like? So you start looking at magazines and realize, well, there's color correction, there's retouching, there's design, everything, all this stuff is there. That world is completely isolated from the TV industry world, which was quite a different industry with different people. But they're the same. The work they're doing is actually the same. The mediums are different, but there's no reason why you couldn't use publishing tools in television. That meant basically getting on computers properly. I mean, there had been computer-based systems.
Yes.
And we bought a system that was over $1 million on a Silicon Graphics computer. That was extremely expensive. That's just the same business model with a different thing. I mean, instead of it being a big box of custom electronics, it's a giant expensive computer. There's really no difference to the business model. I realized what we need to do is change the business of television, not just change the products in television. So by making a low-cost capture card I could plug inside the machine, now any Mac could do it. I mean, I had a lot of heat from doing a Mac product. This is the late 90s, right? Apple wasn't in a good position in those days.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, you insane? But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but all these engineers run off and build Windows products. But in fact, it's the Mac that the designers are using.
Yes.
So you should tailor the product to the customers. That's, for some reason, it's like a basic fundamental problem. Make your product easy to buy, make it desirable. Well, who are you trying to target? You're trying to get creative people into the TV industry and empower them, right? So if you don't make a product suitable for them, then it's just idiotic. I mean, what you make is some engineering tool, and that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is, how do I get a designer to work in the TV industry, make it more affordable so they can actually build their own businesses? Well, it's a low-cost capture card plugged into a Mac, and then they can use the design tools that they already use. And so this is the kind of thing. Now, as far as the funding part of that question, well, you sort of approach some banks and things, and you quickly realize that what you're trying to do, you can't prove is going to succeed. I mean, you're going to change an industry. I mean, who does that?
Yeah.
At the time, I was just young, so you didn't know any better. To me, the industry just seemed wrong, so it should be this way. You're not trying to change anything. You're just trying to, do the thing that works or seems like it should be right.
Yeah.
So you just get to work doing that. So the problem is, everyone I interacted with, there's no way in hell they're going to fund something or help you in any way. In fact, quite the opposite. They continually bring you down all the time. Like, I used to have people coming out where I was working and just like say all this negative stuff. I'm like, did you just come out to say negative stuff? Like, there's nothing in this conversation. Like, so I think, you just sort of think, well, yeah, but this seems so clear to me. I think it's the clarity of what you think needs to be done, and you just focus on that. So you just spend every cent you have. I mean, I remember counting out literally coins to pay my car registration.
Yeah.
I remember almost getting a product going, and the post-production company we were working at the back of burnt down, and the fronts all smashed. The building next door burnt down over in South Melbourne and smashed all the front. So you just almost have a product, and you get there on Sunday morning because it burnt down on Saturday night, and there's smoke drifting out of the building. You're like, oh my God, what now? Like, what else can go wrong? It's an amazing number of things that can go wrong, but at the same time, you appreciate it when things go well because of all that. So you just have to make it happen, and essentially it's an evolutionary process. You either make it happen or it won't exist. So if it exists, it means you managed to do it. You managed to pull it off.
So you started with the capture card, and then how did you bring other products into the fold? And because, yeah, like you guys do a lot of, like, you're, like I said, you're a leader in the space and disrupting this space. So like, how long did it take before you got profitable?
We were always profitable right from the start. I mean, you contain
did that
your
strategically?
Costs. Well, you contain your costs within your income. If you don't, you die instantaneously.
Yeah.
When you start off from nothing, you don't have credit. So you can't spend, if you've got $10, you can't spend 11. So you just cannot. Like, it's not there. Like, it physically isn't there. I remember a whole week I went one time with almost not eating. I just had rice. I boiled rice, and I still had some rice.
Wow.
Because it just worked out I needed to buy some components. The components came in a tray. There were 6 of them, so I could build a run of 6 boards. 5 of them were damaged. I had to yell at the supplier. I think he used a bad language, and the supplier told me, oh, you didn't have to use the bad language. I said, yes, I did have to use bad language because you weren't going to fix them. you dropped these in your warehouse and they damaged the pins, and this was gonna screw us up. It's incredibly difficult. And so you just literally don't have the money you don't have. So, you talk about funding. What you're actually doing is you're funding it from sales. You're building something and then selling it. It's maybe not the best thing in the world, but it does solve someone's problem. It does solve their needs. Your mind might be 10 or 20 years ahead of that, but that's the next step, and you just do the next step, and you get the money coming in, and you just work it through, and that's really the goal. So you just have no choice. Otherwise, you will absolutely fail. Remember, you're starting with failure.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do is find a crack of success in just a wall of failure all in front of you. And if you can get through that, and that's, you just got to keep hunting until you find the crack of, and you just break through, and then you'll pull it off. There's simply no choice. No one's going to fund something that's different to the point where it's unacceptably different. And what I've noticed about the business world as we get bigger is that they don't handle anything that's different. They cannot understand it. I think one of the problems, it comes down to money. Money's a tool that people use to interact with each other. Like, you didn't spend your day hunting for food. Either did I. We do other things, and it gives us the money we need to buy food.
Yes.
Money's the tool we use to interact with each other. You couldn't have cities and things without it. So it's great. The problem is when money starts getting made as the center of everything, and then we serve the money. That's a reversal, and money now becomes our master, not our tool. And I think that's, as we get bigger, we see the business world is obsessed with money and fear. And so what happens is that's like that term disruption you used, which I actually find offensive, because what are you disrupting? You're disrupting the money. That people are creative. People do creative things. That's what they do. That's all we were doing when we started out. You're just doing a lot of creative stuff, and you think, oh, this will work out.
Yeah.
I'm creative in a focused way that's going to solve a person's problem, and I've got a product hopefully that I'll be able to build from that creativity and sell to them.
Yes.
I've got to build a few at a time and get the money in, and then build another few. But I'm not disrupting anything. I'm trying to survive, and I'm trying to solve a problem for people. But disruption is not the correct word. That's why I find that word either confusing or offensive, because what you're disrupting is money, but that's our tool. It's not our master.
I see. So when was it how long did it take before you really felt, when you got to that stage where it's like, I'm onto something, like it's a tipping point? When did you hit that tipping point where things got easier? Like, because, like our company, media company, 100% bootstrapped too. We haven't raised any capital. We're not in the hundreds of millions of annual revenue, but in the millions. And it doesn't get easier, I agree, but at the same time, you can survive comfortably. Like, when did it get to that stage for you?
I think there's probably two steps. I feel like the first step, and it's a good question, because I haven't quite thought about it before, because you're just always focused on the next thing. But I think there's probably two steps of survival. I think the first step is when you can actually pay yourself something. I remember for years, a few of us were going for years with no money.
Wow.
Or just enough to pay my rent and some food. I remember putting, it shows you how things have changed, but $10 for dinner, $5 for lunch, and literally going to a bank. I threw away my ATM card or cut it up, so I didn't have an ATM card. I'd put some money in my account. I'd go to the bank, take out $5 and $10 note for each day. So the $5 was for lunch, $10 was for dinner. Put them out 7 days, and my coins I put in a bucket. At the end on the Sunday, I'd see if I could go watch a movie or something with the surplus money. There's no way you could get dinner for $10 now, but that was what you could do, and that was my budget. And you just lived off that for quite a while until you finally get enough revenue. Because remember, with us, we're paying for parts. So you bring out a new model.
Very capital intensive business.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I find it so interesting.
You want to get an engineer, like maybe an extra engineer. So I remember that one of the first engineers we hired, we literally get every cent we had, we spent on him to pay his wage, because engineers aren't cheap. And so we're getting nothing. We're giving literally everything we have to this hardware engineer, and then you get another one, and you start to keep up with the kind of the product changes you need to do. But you're also trying to buy parts, and every time you bring out a new model, then you need a huge amount of parts to build those models.
More SKUs.
It just becomes, you never seem to have enough. But I think the point where you could introduce products or new products and also pay yourself, I think, is the first survival step.
And how long did that take you? From
start? Probably a couple of years, easy.
Yep.
Probably a couple of years before I actually could start paying myself.
Yep.
I think that's it. The second step is much harder, and I think we still haven't achieved that. That's where you can sort of take your place in the world from a point of view of do people understand what you're trying to do? Like, well, look, in many ways, I think we have achieved that. I mean, the fact that we're here talking,
Yep.
it's sort of like what you find is when you're trying to do something new, remember this whole disruption thing,
Yeah.
you get a wave of hatred. I mean, I'm changing the TV industry. Now, in my mind, I'm just allowing a whole bunch of people to move into an industry that could never do that before. But the people who are in it that have done well, some of them reacted very badly. And I'm at trade show saying, yeah, but you don't understand. You're the senior people in this industry. The industry is going to get much bigger, and then you guys will be running facilities and doing all sorts of things. You've got the experience of, my line at the time was, you know how to make a client happy. The younger guys can operate the tool, but you actually know how to do the job and actually make care of the client and all that stuff. And that's what's happened. All the people that were in that industry have now become the senior people who are running companies and things like that. But I think what happened is you just get this rejection, waves and waves of rejection from the industry that's there. But I was trying to empower people to come into it anyway, so I didn't worry about that. But there was just waves of this, everything doing wrong, you make crap, you guys are, just the worst stuff, particularly from other manufacturers, of course. And it does happen to a certain degree on some things still, but my feeling is once you get through that, and once those new product lines and the things you're doing are accepted, that's kind of the second wave of solo, where now everyone goes, okay, now the industry's changed and you are a major player in it, and that gives you what you call some credibility from the point of view that you're a viable supplier to people. We supply to all the major broadcast networks around the world, and obviously the feature films and all these other things. So these were some of the last things to come on, but maybe that's where some of the acquisitions have helped, I guess.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a respect-based thing where you're able to survive in the market. You've created a market, but also it has had some effect on the markets that's there, and people sort of now accept you, I think was probably that second stage of survival. So when you do a new product, people notice it. You can get, when you do some new technology, they notice it, and the marketing machine gets easier. It's a complicated, long answer, I guess, but that's kind of my feeling. There's two major steps.
And step two, I'm curious, how long do you think that really took? Because I think in today's age, people just want things now. They want things faster. They're not prepared. Like, one of my mentors, he says to me that to build anything of true worth and significance, it takes at least 7 to 10 years. And I'm just curious,
that's right.
How long did it take to build, Blackmagic Design, be a tier 1 brand, industry leader, to produce, Game of Thrones, all these exceptional films and TV shows. How long did that take, would you say?
Well, I think one of the good things about some of these is, of course, when we've done 7 acquisitions, and as we've acquired some companies, like DaVinci Resolve, for example, is the one that's used in Los Angeles for most of the film. And so when we acquired that company, we essentially acquired
their
those
credibility.
Clients. But of course, at the time, you go, oh my God, you guys have bought them. It's going to be horribly wrong. And of course, within a year, they realized everyone was super happy and realized what we'd done. And we'd actually done what we said we would. And it comes down to it. I think products come and go, but trust is much longer term. And I think he's right. It does take about 7 to 10 years. For us, it's different product lines. Like, one product breeds another. You start with the capture card, and then you say, oh, we've got monitoring problems. So, well, let's solve that.
Yep.
Oh, now we've got a problem with this. Let's solve that. And then we bought DaVinci, wanted to try and get more people doing color correction because we understand what it does. Only the higher end facilities could really do it properly. Oh, but the cameras aren't up to it. The digital film camera is really expensive, but cheap video cameras are there, but they're cheap, but they clip everything off, and you can't do much creatively with the image. So what do you need to do? So that breeds cameras, but each product line you move into, you get a wall of hostility because, some people, like for cameras, for example, some people have just bought a camera. That's all they are. They're not really, their only claim to being, working in the TV industry is they bought a camera. When you suddenly make those cameras more affordable, you're not concerned about that guy. You're concerned about the people you're going to allow to get into the TV industry or the film industry. But of course, the old guard, some of them can be quite feral. So it takes time before people realize, oh no, these guys are making a good product and everything. And often your first product or two is just, it serves a very niche sort of task, and it's not like, the best product ever. You don't go from 0 to 1,000 kilometers an hour instantaneously. You've got to step through a few steps. So we found a few things that we could fix and sort out before we broaden what we're doing.
Real sweet.
Yeah, and you let the customers pull you along a little bit as well, but it does take time. I mean, you get walls of hostility, but some people love you. And over time, more people love you, and the walls of hostility start to fade away. Until then, you got people now pulling you in different directions, and it becomes more collaborative, and you go into a show now, and you're meeting up with people you've seen before, and you're chatting to them about different things. And like it's funny when I go to a trade show and you've actually got to sell something to someone because they just want to know about a product. I'm like, oh, but I really want to just have a chat, because that's what you're doing. And then, you do find now that you're sort of accepted. But it does take a long time, and each product line for us is different. So we can introduce a new product line to sort something out and suddenly get this wall of hostility, but everything else is humming along nicely. So we've got these overlapping 7 to 10 year timelines that are kind of happening simultaneously, depending on what we're doing. You know?
Yeah, I see. And talk to me around kind of when do you know when to try and solve that next thing or add, the next line, product line, or add the next SKU? Because that can be, it can be quite cost intensive, but then also it's fun. And I think as a creative yourself, it can get really fun to just create this new thing and do this and do that. But sometimes you can lose focus and the traction that you built with this one, and then you got this new one, and then this one's going down. I'm going with this. Like, you've done this for a long time. What piece of advice would you share there, and how you've navigated between knowing when to launch this new product line or knowing when to get this one right and wait?
You've got to try and create a climate of education and you've got to try and eliminate fear. The fundamental difficulty you'll always have is to do anything great needs more than one person. The problem is each one of those people has to be different to each other. You can't have 5 of the same person. You've got to have a user interface guy and a software engineer, hardware engineer, industrial design. Now industrial design alone's got stylists, and then there's mechanical, thermal, EMC. You've got all these different types of people. People just do finish, the finishes, on the surface finishes and things like that, CAD guys, all this. So you could have for a product, we could have 150 people working on a product.
Yeah, wow.
Depending what it is, even more. And so how do you get all those people to work together without killing each other? And the worst thing is, the better they are, the more disconnected from they are as far as their perspectives. You see it in the broad economy. As economies get big and more complex, how's a hairdresser understand what a mining magnate's dealing with, or a graphic designer understand what an accountant's dealing with? I mean, they're just such different industries. And as everyone gets better at what they do, people move apart. So the difficulty is, how do you get all these people working together? And the trick is to try and get that to do that. So if you can try and do amazing products that are a little bit beyond what everyone can do, not in a killer way, but in a way that's actually a bit of a stretch and in an exciting way too. You think, wow, this product's actually going to be quite exciting. People get excited about that product, but they also understand that they need each other, because I need a great user interface on that product. So the software guy's quite happy that the user interface guy has done such good work, and the user interface guy's like amazed that he's made my user interface animate, by writing code behind it. So I think the trick is to try and do extraordinary things if you can, and but at the same time try and get all these people working together and create a system that's as flexible as it possibly can be. Like, if things don't quite work the right way, be able to change in real time. We try to eliminate all planning here, as far as...
Really?
Yeah, because planning is rigid. So what you want to do is be capability based. You want to try things, improve your capabilities, and then go, okay, what's next? Then you can respond extremely quickly. So the long-term planning is people's skills and the capabilities we have.
Yes.
And some of the systems and processes. We consume over 1 million parts a day. Yeah, that's not something you can do without systems, but your systems are designed to back flexibility. Then you can instantaneously move on something really quickly. And that means that nobody's being bogged down with process as far as defining what they do. They're completely free to do what needs to be done to make things the way they need to go. But the systems are then to support them in that, not to control them. Yes. And it's a different way of thinking, and it's not very common. We're swamped with data and spreadsheets and all this crap. We don't use any of that stuff. We don't do market research. We don't do any of this stuff. We just, you talk to someone, and they're a person. They're not a spreadsheet cell or a big data thing. They're a person. And I think one of the problems we've got these days is that people are trying to turn everyone into data. They're people. Just see people as people, and then you'll work out what to do with them. Yeah, people will amaze you. I think that we're in a somewhat dictatorial environment. Software engineers and other people like that are creating algorithms that control people. Like people talk about artificial intelligence and how it could be horrible. That's what we have now. We have large bureaucracies and companies and government who use data to decide what policies are, which then control people. That's the worst of possible situation, because nobody's seen for who they are. And that's why people are getting antsy and protesting. So maybe artificial intelligence will actually save us, because you can have artificial intelligence actually knowing you versus just you being a bunch of data based on something, So I think you've got to see people for what they are and then move quickly. The other have everything is designed to support people to change direction, change things quickly. Never blame anyone for anything. If something goes wrong, people didn't come to work wanting to do things wrong. I mean, I have met some very, very bad people who did literally come to work to do the most destructive damage they possibly can. But they're extremely rare. When it comes down to it, people will impress you. Have faith in people, trust people, empower them, make sure the people are actually making decisions, no hierarchy above them, and make sure all your systems back there what they need to do, and let them go. Get out of their way. They'll blow your minds. People will absolutely amaze you. People are incredible. Let them be incredible.
So when it comes to, I'm curious, let's say there is no planning. How do you know what product line? You just let people kind of you build teams, like exceptional teams, and
we have a product plan, but it's literally less than a page. It has to be less than a page.
Yes.
And most of that's actually the video standards it supports.
Yep.
It's pretty clear what a product is. There's a person who's responsible for that product.
Yes.
They are the product plan, not a document. One of the problems that happens with planning is the document becomes the product, not the product itself. And we've got OEMs and we work with other companies, and they have sometimes elaborate plans, but they always fail. Because the problem is complexity. Complexity has bugs hidden in it. Anything with complexity has bugs in it. A plan is actually generally complex. So simplify that down to literally a very small amount and go, what are we building here? Do we know what we're building? Okay, your responsibility is to know what it is we're building. You interact with anyone you need to know or talk with, and you become the human plan. You're the person who takes the spirit of that product with you, and you're the person who has to help it, mother hen it, like a child, right? I mean, you're actually constructing this product. So that's the way we do it. A person is responsible for that product, and we have a very short definition of what it is, but generally it's the person. Sometimes we'll do something more elaborate, like we were building a control panel, which I think is behind me, and we had to sort of work out what controls we wanted on it.
Yeah. So
we thought about all the controls we'd like to have, and we put them in a priority order, and then worked out how many could we fit, and okay, that's the stuff that goes in. Yeah, so we do that kind of thing. Obviously the systems and bills of materials, the parts, and all these other things, but not this like elaborate, complex plan. We know what we're building. Let's just get to build, work and do it, and then let the guys be free to do it. And it changes around. Well, it'll change around a bit, and we just keep discussing. It's lots and lots of conversations, but no very, very minimal structure, but controls people's actions. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about systems that support people's creativity and what they need to do, but don't control their actions. Otherwise, they'll automatically do things, and that's one way you hire people. You hire people for their brain. People are creative, right? I mean, we're the only species that can create things. I mean, you've got monkeys poking sticks at things. That's not really creativity. You can't monetize a stick and a monkey. Well, maybe you can. Circuses do, But when it comes down to it, we are creative, and that's what makes us unique as a species. So you've got to foster that. Also, it's much more dignified as a way for people to treat each other too. So, and it's fun.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Like just having fun, doing work you're passionate about, and just having fun.
It's really fun.
Yeah. So, tell me. You've done 7 acquisitions, and where were you don't have to talk me through all of them, but how big now is Blackmagic Design and the company? How many staff? And
about 1,000 staff, I think.
1,000 staff, and
there's only about 350 here. We've got engineering facilities in America, multiple.
Yep. Singapore,
UK, and Japan. And also we've got sales offices in different countries. So, it's quite spread out. Factories in different places. We've got 3 factories. It's all spread out a bit. You go where people are.
Yep.
So, you never intended to get this big, but at the same time, you're always blown away by the people that are here. I mean, it's funny when you're sitting in a meeting and you're talking about some problem, and you do tend to try and describe the world of what we need to be doing in forms of problems, not solutions, because otherwise you can't use other people's brains. But when you see people rip into a problem and start discussing stuff, it's like sometimes it's shocking when you realize the talent you have in a room. It's quite surprising, but that's what's fun about it, because you don't actually know what's going to happen when you come to work every day. But there's a whole bunch of things we've got to try and struggle with and tackle what's going to happen. But everything we're doing is really a foundation for the next things that we're doing. So what we're doing now is so important because it's going to allow us to then do the next thing. So everyone in this company is essentially, most people in the company are actually working on the future, working on things that we will be, not so much day to day.
Maintain this status quo.
Yeah, we try to minimize the number of people on day to day. Again, planning.
Yeah.
If that's somewhat automated and simplified down, you have less bureaucrats doing bureaucracy type things, which control people's actions. It's more like a few people are actually supporting what we're doing, and then most people are working on the future. That's how I define how creative we are. If you're doing something on the future, then you're actually contributing something creative which will have benefits. If you're just doing day-to-day spreadsheet work, like I hate spreadsheets.
Yes.
Because they're just so immediate. They divide people. Spreadsheet, everyone has their own bit of data. that's different to someone else's, and it's, divides people, and it's the present, and it's immediately out of date once you've finished it. Whereas it also indicates that systems fail. You have failures in your systems that you have to use. People have to use spreadsheets to get around. So that's you're just trying to keep it all in the future all the time.
So when it comes to like I find it quite interesting. You're very, very passionate about being a creative, but you still are the CEO of the company, and there is a lot of kind of operational stuff that maybe you're not. Am I safe to say you're probably not as passionate about the operational side of things, or?
Well, you've got to organise yourself. Like, the company's fairly automated, and it runs on software that I've written. So I've personally written all the software that runs the company itself. That way, we don't have to have a whole lot of operational people. So I know exactly what the operations are because it's running through in my code. So
sorry, what do you mean by that? I don't understand.
Well, everything. If we if a reseller orders a product from us,
yes,
or a customer orders some products, that immediately flows into the factory, and if they don't have stock, they'll build it. So within 5 minutes, they could actually be building a product that just got ordered before a sales office even knows. When that product is built, it'll automatically order all the parts for it. We could be shipping stuff in containers or air freight or wherever. Like, this whole system is running on code that I've written. So, you know intimately what's going on, and you can adapt, like by running code ahead of some change you need to be doing. It can be a little slower sometimes if you're busy and there's a bit to do. Yes. But a lot of these things, you just tweak and change things as you go.
Wow, that's interesting. So then, would you say that you spend most of your time speaking to your team, just doing kind of visionary stuff, looking at the new products and just doing fun stuff mainly? Like, not mainly, but yeah, it's like, sounds like
to a certain degree. Like, if you like you could do a spreadsheet to work something out, for example, and it might take you, a couple of hours to do. Now you might spend 2 days on code to do the same function, but then you've automated it and that'll work forever. And as you scale, that scales up with you. I think that, in the future, and this really applies to very young people, like there's kids in school now who are learning how to code. I don't think CEOs should be able to be CEOs unless they can code. If you can't code, you can't think. So you can't understand systems and you can't understand complexity. So it just becomes an ego dominant hierarchy-based thing where you're just trying to control people and make you wealthy and powerful. That's not the future of business. The future of business is actually grouping people together. In fact, what business was supposed to be, collections of people making things beyond what one person can do. You have a cluster of brains and are able to do something that's beyond the capabilities of individuals. That's what business is really supposed to do, and that funds itself because it's that the results of those teams of people hopefully makes money. But unfortunately, the power to pull us back to a land-based, sort of animalistic-based economy is always there. It's always very strong. You can never refute the truth of owning land and making income from it. Where the creative thing is actually fairly new. It's only been Industrial Revolution kind of enabled, right? When machines started making products, design also became an industry. I think everyone underestimated what happened during the Industrial Revolution. To me, that's also when design kicked off, because the machines make the products. Now the craftsmanship is actually in the design of products, which are then mass produced. We can all have them. It's quite a simple model. It's the intangible bit appeared at the same time as the tangible bit, which is the factory. So I think what's interesting is no one's really understood that. So to me, it's all about creativity. So if I need to do something new, then okay, it'll take me 2 days to do some code to do it. But what I end up having is something that scales with me and it's there forever, versus the spreadsheet that's pretty much dead the minute I finished it. And so that's the future of business. That's the way things will work. You don't need to really build an artificial intelligence to run a company. If you can think through what an artificial intelligence would decide to do and then just do what it would decide to do. It's not that hard. We're also intelligent. We're not, stupid. So just, understand what intelligence is. Try to make your company intelligent and then think about what you need to be doing. What would an artificial intelligence decide to do if it was running your business? Then just write code to do that. And then that'll just happen. And then you get the benefits of artificial intelligence without all the hassle of thousands of engineers trying to create something that thinks, and it's probably just going to try and kill you anyway. So, what's the point? They just argue with you like kids do. I've already created kids, they argue with you. Last thing I need is some all powerful robot thing with laser eyes coming at me. I've got enough things to deal with. So, but yeah, but that's the thing. So, people need to be better. CEOs don't really have to know much. I think the thing about CEOs, which I find interesting, is, or the business world, and this is a theory, and it sounds somewhat pessimistic, I suppose, but they seem to be a bunch of people that know the rules. They don't seem to be able to create anything. And if you question the rules, they think you don't know what you're talking about. But like, well, so nothing can be changed. Everything's rigid. I mean, 130 years ago, China was a very rigid society. And then Europeans come floating along and destroyed the country. I mean, what happened to China was disgraceful, but it was the rigidity and the thinking there that caused problems with them being able to adapt to what was going on. And they went through years of hell. I mean, a lot of people got killed and all kinds of chaos. Now they've got a very flexible thinking, and they've burned up the industrial world, in a very short period of time, and I don't think anyone's really understood this is not just a cheap labor country. There's a whole new way of thinking and a flexibility of thinking, a focus on actually the product and all these sort of healthy ways of thinking about things. And that's created enormous success for them. And there's stuff to be learned. And I think everyone's just dismissing it as a cheap labor country. But the same thing happened in Japan, in the 90s, where people, Japan, cheap labor. It's like, well, no, hang on. They'd revolutionized a whole bunch of manufacturing processes and things like that. And then people learn from that. So I think there's a lot to learn from different cultures. And and what I find now in the Western world is our business culture has become so rigid and so inflexible. And it's like I joke and say, business people are so rigid in the way they think. They seem to be able to move data around, but they're not able to compute. So like it's like they're not Turing complete, like they're they're not complete people. And if you question the rules, they know you obviously don't know. So it's a bit strange world of hardcore rules, and the rules get more complex all the time. And they've mastered that. And so they have their position in this dominant hierarchy of power based on understanding the way things work. And, if you're a creative person, well, then you can get destroyed by that because they don't allow you to exist. And so the question for me is a healthy society one in which multiple people can be creative and they can succeed and they can exist as being different, but also be productive? Like, how many cultures can you have in a country? Is it just the business culture, the way it works? And if you're not part of that, you get destroyed by it? Because I've seen a hostility come at me from the business world that's unexplainable. Where's the negativity, the hostility? It's almost like a violence to what we're doing. People will be surprised by it, but then within no time they're criticizing heavily what we're doing, and it's
like, why? What are they saying?
Well, it's complex, but mostly it's in simple terms. It seems to be very metrics driven. It's like they just seem to recurring revenue, profit per square foot, gross margins, all these things. They're all just sort of metrics. But in communism systems, they killed tens of millions of people because some dude who was powerfully connected within an office somewhere deciding based on metrics what the farming policy should be. And meanwhile, on the ground, it didn't work, and thousands of people, millions of people died. And we've kind of got the same thing. The finance markets, just to simplify all these companies down to a bunch of metrics, they increase the complexity of accounting standards to give them more information, or what they think is giving them more information. What they're actually doing is destroying the creativity in businesses because everyone's terrified to make the metrics look bad. So they game the metrics. So you see scandals all the time where there's a scandal. Well, what do you think? If you focus on just metrics, people are going to try and hit the metrics. But then what they're doing is gaming the metrics. You force them to do that. So you get a systems failure. And that's what the global financial crisis was. It was a systems failure. What amazes me is that they don't understand we've got a world where it's seen to be okay to let some of the older industries, so to speak, disappear. But the very thing we now need, which is new types of creativity, is not able to really grow within the structures that we have because they're quite hostile to people who try to do things in a different way. So while you can get, you see success stories of startups who get funding and everything like that, but they've got to be very, very compatible with the way people will fund. What happens if you do something that is not understood? How well would you get funding for something that people can't understand? You don't. It simply doesn't happen. So unless you bootstrap it and you have enormous fanaticism to get that going, then it's crushed. And so what you have is new industries can't blossom to replace the old industries. So you eventually just get more unemployed people and more industry support. And in the end, the government has to step in. So you kind of evolve into a somewhat complicated mash-up communist thing that doesn't really kind of work. And it just becomes a mess. And everyone's at each other. Everyone's fighting and complaining. And, prime ministers get flipped out every 5 minutes and all this kind of stuff. So there's a fighting-based world that we don't really feel like we're part of, but you can see there's a hostility from that world all the time that's constantly surrounding us. So how we survive going forward is, based on how well we can sort of connect to that world. But it's a very confusing, strange world that seems to be based on a lot of the opposite principles to what we focus on as some of our core principles.
Yeah,
so I'm still working out that,
Can you tell me about, because I find it quite interesting, the way you see the world, and obviously, you must have some. Tell me about the unique principles that your company runs off, Blackmagic Design, and also around the culture, around how you help people do their best work.
I think that, well, I mean, there's so many principles, but a good
Like some core
example.
ones, if you would
Well, a good
indoctrinate,
example
yeah.
is the differences of opinion. I mean, I remember I was talking to some MBA guy, which I'm not fans of MBAs. The MBA education is too simplistic and it's not really very sophisticated. It's very pop culture kind of thing, very data driven, like very profit and efficiency driven, but that's obviously the opposite of what customers needs. So a good example is someone was saying, oh, so, they asked a question about your inventory and, and how many months of inventory. Oh, that's X number of inventory turns a year. That's really great. And I'm like, really? Like, I just found it so strange that someone would think of inventory turns as being a parameter that's a desirable metric for the business. Because to me, the level of inventory that I want is just enough to make sure that I can deliver immediately to customers because I have stock. But I'm just running out of some things. So if I'm not just running out of things, I don't know what the minimum is. So what I'm looking for is a floor that's just enough stock, but just occasionally running out of product. So I know that I'm not overstocked. If I was never running out of product, I might be overstocked at some point, not knowing quite where I am. If I'm running out of product a lot, then that means I'm understocked of products and parts. Mostly it's parts because we turn them into product. But if there's a point where I'm almost always in stock, but sometimes not quite, that's the right level of inventory. And it's based on being able to supply product immediately as customers need it on demand. So how quickly can I fulfill what a customer needs? Then I get the opportunity sale of actually having a product when someone needs a product and they can buy it from me. That to me is the correct inventory level. Now it's more complex than just a 9 turns a year kind of thing.
Yes.
But but that's that's their metrics. That's the way they work. So what happens, of course, is that you end up trying to run your inventory turns up, so you destock. And we've seen that with our suppliers. We have 52-week lead times on a lot of products, a lot of parts. Sorry. Now our customers want products in real time. They want it today. So we have to manage that and make sure that we can build products today, even when it's a year lead time on a part. So now they've done that because they've done two things. One is they removed all their inventory and said, well, we'll just wait for customers to order it. Then we've got the best inventory turns because we literally don't have any. But then what they also do is they realize, well, hey, maybe we're going to build a factory because it will save money. And if we ever get at capacity, then we can raise our prices. So we'll actually make more money by spending no money. But then everyone else just has to suffer the fact that all the parts prices go up and we can't get enough. And the lead times blow out to 52 or 54 weeks. So you get this calamity that actually ends up happening and the customers are treated terribly, but the guy's metrics look great. So this is the difficulty that we have. We're living in a world where everyone's just seen as metrics, and here we are trying to be creative and try to make customers happy. And you see that dysfunction everywhere. I mean, you go and sit on a tram or a train and you realize the decisions that have been made to run this. The trains are the same speed that they were 100 years ago. Why? I mean, these trains can go faster. Nobody cares. Nobody actually has sat there and gone, oh, we want to make it go. They're just administering it, working out the least they can spend to make the most amount of money. There's no pride in what they're doing, don't care. So it's just the least system they can possibly do. But we own the trains, and what are you going to do? You're going to have to use them. So we just have to be good enough to be politically not savaged, but otherwise we'll do the least amount we can possibly do. And that's the world we live in. And people are pissed about that. They're getting really sick of it. So they're wanting more, but the system is so dysfunctional. No one's really at fault. There's no demon here. Everyone loves to blame Donald Trump or something like that, but it's not really. It's the system. It's the way we work together. It's the tools we use, the way we interact with each other. We have to become more sophisticated and think deeper about what we're actually really doing. Not just trying to pull everything out of the system we can with the least input. And in the end, you just get minimal of everything. We're burning up our past and our history and consuming it up. And we're not building anything. That's the difficulty,
Yeah. So can you tell me just a little bit about the culture and what you've tried to design to really foster creativity within your organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we try to do is we try to be product centric, not hierarchy based. I mean, look, there are people. So you guys are
pretty flat?
Yeah, there's people in different roles, but we do, we don't have any meetings unless we need to work something out. There's no one wants to be sitting around a boring meeting. Let's not waste people's time.
So there's no
progress
weekly
reports,
or
none
monthly?
of that stuff. No, we just all wander from group to group, and it's all the campus here. Yep. We couldn't, it's not Silicon Valley, right? We couldn't, we didn't have the ecosystem around us to support us, so we've created that.
Yep.
So we've got marketing and photography and translators even, and engineers and PCB guys and industrial designers and everything all here in different buildings, and we can walk from building to building and, interact with the people we need to do. That's what we do. We spend constantly our time moving around between different groups, walking up to people, chatting, and we're all doing that,
Yep.
So we don't need to really meet. Sometimes we do, but not very often, because it just wastes people's time. Most people don't want to be in the meeting, so just don't have them unless there's something to work out. Sometimes you need to get a group together, but most of the time, it's because you've got a bit of paper and you're all drawing something or trying to work it out. Get out of people's way. Make sure that you support them and just let them do things. Let them take things to where they might need to go. You hear a lot of people talk about, moving decision-making to the coalface, so to speak. Well, why do that? Like, there's a guy at the coalface who's actually working at the coalface. Give him enough information that he needs to let him make the decision, because he knows. Make sure your job is to give him the bigger picture so he understands how his interactions or what he's doing interfaces to the rest of the company and the rest of the group, so then he has more awareness. I've never met anyone that can't understand. Well, some people have got bad intentions, but mostly of the time I've met people, everyone understands everything. People are smart. They're not, I don't subscribe to this kind of thing, oh, well, those people are not as smart as those people. Everybody, if they understand the human language, of some kind, they can understand what you're telling them. And then everyone can work as a group. And I think there's energy in that group. I think it's a fundamental thing. And we never get it right. We're human and we'll never get it perfect, right?
Of course.
There's just some people who culturally will be different to, it just won't fit in. And, we're big enough now to move people around if they're not fitting in with some people, because, personalities do great occasionally from time to time, but you just got to keep trying. At least if you keep trying, look, you can't be bad. You're just not good yet. It's something. You just got to keep trying and hope that, whatever problems you suffer from, you can learn from, and hopefully, reduce that likelihood of happening and be a better person in the future. As I said to my kids, if you're learning something every day, then tomorrow you're smarter. If you're not learning something new every day, then tomorrow you're just older. And I think that if it's all fundamentally about learning, and then we'll work it out. We'll all, bunch of smart people work it out.
Yeah. Awesome. So look, we have to work towards wrapping up, Grant. A couple of last questions. What's kind of exciting to you that you guys are working on to further, I won't say the word disrupt, I don't want to insult you, but further make a dent perhaps in this industry? And where's the best place after that? Where's the best place people can find out more about yourself and Blackmagic Design and you guys' work?
As far as what's coming up, I think what I'm mostly focused on is, obviously there's certain products that we're working on all the time, but my general thing is, what is it we don't know? What is it we're bad at? Well, especially me personally.
Yep.
What areas am I just really crap at? Like, I was bad at talking in front of cameras and things and public speaking. I'm still probably pretty bad at it. I ramble on a bit because I tend to find that, when you're talking to someone, I often repeat myself a little bit, but in different ways, because you're kind of thinking it through as you're talking. And so I probably do a bit of that. I know I get off track a bit, but so there's a bit of that. But I think in many ways, the longer term planning is, what do we don't know? What do we need to kind of learn? How do we learn it? Often we push ourselves a bit on something to learn it. So that's the long term thing, is what's going to happen in the future? Like, what do we need to be ready for as far as what do we need to know? What things would we like to try that we might never have even assumed we could? Often people say, oh, we should do this product. I'm like, unless it's really, we can add something to it, there's no point doing it. I don't like to make products that just market settle, segment battle some other product. I don't like Coke versus Pepsi sort of stuff, like I want to do something interesting. So
you want the superior, you want the far superior product.
And you do get a lot of people in the company go, oh, let's bash this product. It's like, what for? Like, even if it's someone who's been nasty to us, it's like, it just doesn't, like, what's the point of that? We don't waste our time with the industry gossip-based products, let's do something interesting. But you do accumulate sometimes a bunch of ideas and you think, oh, actually this would be pretty cool now. Maybe we should do this. But my feeling is, what's the things we don't know? That's really where I'm focused on. What is it I don't know? What do I need to confront myself with and then learn from it? And these are the things that we tend to do. And I think about that with a lot of the stuff here. What can we do that's a step up that we could try that we haven't done before? And I think that's, in many ways, the thread for the longer term thinking is, what do we need to be in the future? What might we need to be in the future? How do we kind of confront some stuff to learn that now so we can get to that future? And then at that point, the products just became things that are possible because of what you're able to do. So it's the foundation of what you're able to do, how smart you are in different things and what kind of team you have that delivers all the products you want to be able to do. So the better you are, the better the products will be. So that's the path. That's what we're really thinking about in a broader view. You know, there's product stuff and technologies, but really the big broad vision is like, what do we need to be better at? So what you can't, which is bad. Everybody wants to see the big powerful CEO that walks in with a firm handshake and, you know, rides a horse or something and, you know, has a giant moustache or something. I'm not quite sure how it works, but you know, my thinking is, well, actually, what's the worst of who I am? What's the baddest, like weakest bits? How do I think about that? What's the bits that are wrong? And you just keep working away at removing that. And that's what you do when you start. When you start with nothing. So there's so much stuff to be better, but I don't think you can actually do anything great unless you start with failure. You have to start with nothing, otherwise you don't get it. And you don't know what the problems are to work. You know, I would have hated to have come out of, say, a formal business school and you just see everything as a bunch of metrics or something. It's much more better and much more gritty to actually just like really focus in on the things you don't know and what you aren't capable of doing, then work those. I'm glad it never got spoon-fed to me. I had to learn all these lessons the hard way. So that's really, I think, the bigger picture of what I'm always thinking about.
Amazing. And where's the best place people can find out more about Blackmagic Design?
Well, you can just sort of Google Blackmagic Design, but we have obviously a website with a lot of product information on it, and cameras and DaVinci color correction switches and all kinds of other product lines that do television work. So if you're interested in television work, you know, definitely check it out. Or if we obviously have DaVinci Resolve, which you can actually download for free, because we actually have a paid version of the product, but we also have a lot of hardware products that work around it. So that's how we make money to run that team. That means you can actually get it for free. So if you're starting out in television, definitely download it and check it out. So you can do editing, color correction, and audio, and now visual effects in it. So that's pretty exciting. So there's no excuse not to get going if you know, your medium or business of choice is television. You know, go for it. That's my feeling.
Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much for your time, Grant. I really appreciate it, mate.
Help.
Great conversation.
No worries. Thank you.